They told you money was just a tool, something neutral, something you could control. But if that were true, why does it feel like it controls everything? Every morning you wake up because a machine tells you to. You race through traffic not to chase passion but to chase payment. You eat meals you didn't savor, say words you didn't mean, and go to sleep with a mind that won't stop calculating. Not because you're greedy, but because you're surviving. And in this world, survival has become a full-time job. You say money doesn't control you, but look closer. Your alarm clock, your commute, your emails, your dinner plans, your arguments, your health, your marriage. They all orbit around one thing, not your dreams, not your values, not your soul, but your bank account. Its balance quietly dictates your decisions, your emotions, your sense of worth. And the most dangerous part, it all feels normal. We live in a system where money doesn't just buy goods. It buys dignity, respect, identity. It decides who gets listened to, who gets ignored, who gets to rest, and who stays stuck in motion. And yet, no one questions the price they're paying to keep playing the game. We weren't born obsessed with money. We were taught to be, conditioned to chase it, programmed to think it's the answer, when in fact, it's become the question we're too afraid to ask. How much is enough? What are you trading for that next dollar? Your time, your health, your freedom, or worse, yourself? Marcus Aurelius once said, "You may leave this life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." But for most of us, it's not that truth shaping our actions. It's our checking account. It's the unpaid bills. It's the mortgage. It's the fear of not having enough. You're not living each day as if it might be your last. You're living each day as if your debt might be. And that's the illusion, that money is just a resource when in reality, it's become a religion. One we worship with our attention, our time, and our choices. We bow to it with every job we hate but keep. With every moment we ignore our kids to send another email. With every part of ourselves we silence to stay safe, stay employed, stay responsible. This isn't about hating money, it's about seeing what it has become. When a number in an account has the power to dictate your self-worth, when the pursuit of more turns into the avoidance of meaning, something is broken, not just in the system, but in how we see ourselves. Because if your life is being driven by something you don't control, can you really call it your life? The truth is, most people aren't chasing wealth. They're running from fear. The fear of being left behind, of not being enough, of falling out of the game. But what if the game was rigged from the start? What if it was never about making enough, but about making you never feel enough? Because if they can keep you striving, they can keep you spending. And if they can keep you spending, they can keep you scared. And if you're scared, you won't stop to ask the question that could shatter the whole thing. Why am I doing any of this? The world has trained you to believe that money is safety, that control is peace, that survival is success. But Marcus Aurelius saw the trap, and he left us with the reminder we keep forgetting. You may leave this life at any moment. So why are you letting your bank balance dictate how you live it? Because the tragedy isn't that money matters. The tragedy is that it matters more than meaning, more than truth, more than presence. And slowly, silently, you trade away the parts of you that can't be bought for the illusion that someday you'll have enough to finally start living. But someday never comes because you were never taught how to live, only how to earn. Money by itself means nothing. It's paper, metal, digital numbers in a database. It has no ethics, no soul, no agenda, but society gave it one. Over time, money wasn't just a tool. It became a measure of virtue. We stopped seeing it as a resource and started seeing it as a reflection of character. If you had it, you were smart, ambitious, worth listening to. If you didn't, you were lazy, irresponsible, or worse, irrelevant. That's how the system trains us to think, not because it's true, but because it keeps us in line. Somewhere along the way, we stopped asking what kind of person someone is and started asking what they earn. And in that subtle shift, money became moral. Rich meant right. Poor meant failure. Simplicity became synonymous with giving up, and wealth, that became the ultimate proof you were doing life correctly. According to a 2022 study by Pew Research, 61% of Americans judge a person's value based on their ability to make money, not their kindness, integrity, or depth of thought. That means, for the majority of people, your bank account says more about you than your character. That belief system infects everything. A brilliant teacher working 2 jobs is seen as just getting by, while a hedge fund manager exploiting economic loopholes is hailed as a genius. A parent who chooses time with their children over climbing the corporate ladder is often pitied, not admired. A writer, an artist, a thinker, if they're not monetizing it, they're told it's a hobby, not a real contribution. But Marcus Aurelius warned us against chasing other people's definitions of worth. If someone despises me, that's their problem, my only concern, not doing or saying anything deserving of contempt. In other words, your job isn't to impress the world. It's to stay aligned with your own principles, but try telling that to a culture that sees money as a scoreboard. It's to stay aligned with your own principles, but try telling that to a culture that sees money as a scoreboard, as if numbers define purpose, as if income equals insight. And so we quietly erase everything that doesn't translate into dollars. Empathy, creativity, presence, wisdom. These things can't be measured by profit, so they're undervalued, dismissed, forgotten. This is how money becomes a god, not because it deserves worship, but because we stop believing in anything else. And when that happens, people stop living honest lives. They chase the appearance of success instead of meaning. They compromise what they love for what pays. They silence their real selves for what sells. They trade truth for status. But the tragedy is not that money holds power. It's that we gave it moral authority. We let it decide who matters, who wins, who gets heard, and we never pause to ask, what if we've been revering the wrong thing all along? Because character can't be bought, wisdom can't be deposited, integrity won't show up on a credit report. And when your compass is pointed toward wealth, you stop asking what kind of soul you're becoming. You just ask what kind of deal you can close. That's how the system works. It rewards the external and ignores the internal. Until one day, you wake up with everything society told you to want and realize you've become a stranger to yourself. So the question is no longer how much is he worth? The real question is, what are we even measuring? But it doesn't stop with how we measure people. It goes deeper into how we measure ourselves. You tell yourself you're not chasing wealth, you just want enough. Enough to feel safe, enough to stop worrying, enough to finally rest. But here's the trap. Enough is a moving target. Every time you get close, it moves. Every time you level up, the finish line shifts. You get the raise, but now the house seems small. You pay off the car, but the new model looks better. You make more than you ever have and still feel like you're falling behind. Why? Because you've been conditioned not to feel abundance, but to feel lack. There's a name for this cycle. In behavioral psychology, it's called the hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple. As your income and lifestyle increase, your expectations rise with them. So no matter how much you earn, your happiness resets to baseline. You adapt, you want more, and the treadmill speeds up. You work harder, achieve more, buy bigger, and find yourself just as restless, just as anxious, just as empty. That's not an accident. That's the system functioning exactly as it was designed. Because a content person is hard to manipulate. But a person who always feels just a little behind, that person keeps spending, striving, consuming. That person fuels the machine. From the moment you wake up, the world tells you what you lack. Ads remind you what you don't have. Social media reminds you who you're not. Productivity culture reminds you that you haven't done enough. And the success stories they show you, they're not meant to inspire. They're meant to exhaust, to keep you sprinting after a version of life that looks full but feels hollow. We've replaced needs with cravings, security with status, sufficiency with ambition, and we call that progress. But Marcus Aurelius warned us centuries ago, a limit to your desires means a limit to your sorrows. In other words, if you want peace, you need to know where to stop. But who teaches you how to stop? Where is the class on contentment? Where is the instruction manual on saying, this is enough? You won't find it, because teaching people to be satisfied doesn't sell. Instead, we're taught to feel shame for wanting less, to apologize for choosing simplicity, to see quiet joy as a lack of ambition. But maybe it's the most radical choice of all, to step off the treadmill, to say no to the chase and yes to your own pace. Because here's the truth. No number will ever make you feel complete if you've been trained to feel incomplete. And no lifestyle will ever satisfy if you've been conditioned to keep upgrading. The system keeps whispering, more is better. But your soul knows something different. Your soul is asking, what's the cost? What are you giving up in this race? Your time, your health, your presence, your relationships, yourself? And when the treadmill finally stops, when the noise dies down, will you even recognize the person you've become? Because you might be richer than ever and still not feel whole. So the question isn't, do you have enough? The real question is, do you even know what enough feels like anymore? But the greatest cost of always chasing more isn't material, it's existential. Because the longer you run toward some distant financial goal, the further you drift from the present moment. You don't live for today, you endure it. You treat the present like a toll booth on the highway to your real life. You say, once I reach that number, once I hit that milestone, once I finally feel secure. But security never arrives. And in the meantime, something subtle starts to fade. Your ability to be here. You become a ghost in your own life, physically present but mentally elsewhere. You're there at dinner, but your mind is scanning budgets. You're on vacation, but you're thinking about bills. You see your kids, but you're replaying financial what-ifs like a looped recording. And the longer you live that way, the more disconnected you feel, not just from others, but from yourself. This isn't just a metaphor, it's biological. Neuroscience shows that when the brain is under chronic financial stress, the amygdala, the region responsible for fear and threat detection, becomes hyperactive. That means your nervous system stays in a state of low-level fight or flight, constantly scanning, reacting, bracing, and that hypervigilance comes at a cost. Studies reveal that people experiencing financial anxiety show reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, long-term planning, empathy, and moral decision-making. In simple terms, the more you worry about money, the harder it becomes to concentrate, to connect, and to act with clarity or compassion. So while your bank account may be growing, your capacity to live well is quietly shrinking. You become more reactive, less present, more efficient, less human. Richer in numbers, but poorer in spirit. And here's the irony. The very thing you're trying to earn more of, peace, freedom, fulfillment, is the very thing being drained by the way you're earning it. Because you've been taught that later is where life happens. That if you sacrifice presence now, you'll buy joy later. But later is just another form of postponement. And postponement becomes a way of life. We weren't built to live in hypothetical futures. We were built for presence, for wonder, for connection, for now. But when money becomes your lens, everything else gets blurry. Beauty becomes background noise. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Stillness feels like laziness. And before you even realize it, you've become a stranger to your own existence, always scanning forward, always just out of reach. Marcus Aurelius warned of this trap centuries ago. Don't waste what's left of your life in guessing other people's souls, instead of attending to your own. But that's exactly what we do. We trade inner clarity for outer comparison. We neglect the soul for the scoreboard. We let spreadsheets decide what our lives should feel like. And the worst part, we call this responsibility. But true responsibility begins with presence, with choosing to live, not just survive, with asking, is this moment worthy of the life I'm trading for it? Because in the end, your life won't be measured in net worth. It'll be measured in awareness, connection, and how fully you inhabited the moments you were given. So the question isn't just, how much do you have? The deeper question is, how much of you is still here? You were told money was your tool, that it was something you used to build a life, create options, shape your future. But somewhere along the way, the roles reversed. You don't use money anymore, it uses you. You plan your week around it. You shape your values around it. You say yes to things you hate and no to things you love because of it. You sacrifice your time, your truth, your peace, not for joy, not for meaning, but for income. And maybe the most dangerous part is this. You call that normal. You call that being responsible. But let's be honest. How many people stay in jobs that drain them just to keep the paycheck coming? How many accept projects they know are unethical because the bonus is too big to walk away from? How many stay silent when they should speak up because truth pays less than compliance? We tell ourselves we're in control. But if you can't say no, are you really free? If your choices are shaped by fear of losing status, security, or salary, then who's making the decision? You or your bank account? Marcus Aurelius said it simply, he who is not free from desire is a slave, even if he is an emperor. In other words, if your inner compass is guided by wanting, chasing, craving, you are not the master, you are the servant. And today, money isn't just a desire, it's the desire that shapes all others. It tells you what's worth your time, your energy, your life. It whispers, just a little more, even when it already has everything. That's not freedom, that's bondage in a business suit. And let's not pretend this is about luxury or greed. Most people aren't buying yachts. They're buying the ability to breathe, to sleep at night, to feel like they matter. That's what makes this trap so powerful. It wears the face of necessity. But when necessity becomes a justification for self-betrayal, we're not surviving anymore. We're surrendering. You were not born to trade your soul for a salary. You were not meant to outsource your values to market forces. And yet, many people do it every day because they think they have no choice. But that's the lie. The lie is that money is neutral, that it doesn't care what you do to get it. But deep down, you care. Your conscience cares. Your soul cares. And every time you compromise what you believe in to protect what you've earned, a piece of you goes silent, until eventually you can't hear yourself at all. The system wants you obedient, predictable, scared, because a person who fears losing income is easy to manipulate. But a person who knows how to walk away, that person is powerful, because freedom isn't about having more, it's about needing less. It's about knowing when to say, this isn't worth it, even when the money says otherwise. So ask yourself, are you working for the life you want, or just trying not to lose the one you've built? Because if you're too afraid to stop, too entangled to walk away, too dependent to tell the truth, then money doesn't serve you. It owns you. And that's not success. That's servitude dressed up as stability. So the question is no longer, how much do I make? The question is, how much of myself have I given up to make it? So where does this leave you? If money was never meant to be your master, if enough was a moving target, if presence was traded for pursuit, and if security was used to sell servitude, what now? What does real freedom actually look like? Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics answered that question, not with fantasy, but with fierce clarity. Freedom is not about what you accumulate. It's about what you control, and not control over markets or inflation or the next recession. You can't control any of that. You can't predict interest rates. You can't guarantee returns. You can't outsmart chaos. But there's one thing you can control: yourself. You can control how much is truly enough for you. You can define success not by status, but by alignment. You can choose to live by principle, not by pressure. Because Stoicism isn't about apathy. It's not about pretending money doesn't matter. It's about knowing what matters more and refusing to trade your soul for what doesn't. So here's the practice. It's simple, but not easy. Each morning, ask yourself, if today were my last, would I still use money to do this? Would I still take that job, say yes to that deal, chase that status, delay that dream? Or would I slow down, simplify, live like the moment in front of me was enough? Because it is. And maybe that's the most radical thing you can do in a system built on more. To opt out of the race, not with rebellion, but with intention. To draw a clear line between what you need and what you've been told to want. To create a fixed standard of living instead of a rising one. To reject the lie that your life must expand endlessly to be valuable, because it won't, and it doesn't have to. Marcus Aurelius said it best. Wealth consists not in having many possessions, but in having few needs. That's not resignation, that's power. That's the kind of power no system, no market, no recession can take from you. Because when your peace doesn't depend on profit, when your joy isn't held hostage by external conditions, when your identity is rooted in values, not valuations, you become unshakable. The world may still pull at you. The ads may still whisper. The culture may still call you upward, forward, faster, but inside, you'll know the truth. You were never meant to be a number, or a role, or a price tag. You were meant to live fully, freely, presently, and the path to that life doesn't start with more. It starts with less. Less noise, less craving, less fear, more clarity, more presence, more soul. Because true freedom has nothing to do with how much you own, and everything to do with how little owns you. It's not the economy you need to master, it's your own mind. It's not the market you need to predict, it's your own priorities. It's not the future you need to control, it's your courage to live now. So no, you don't need to quit your job, sell your house, or vanish from society. You just need to retire from the lie that money gives you freedom. Because the truth is, freedom begins the moment you stop trying to buy it and start remembering you were born with it.